Okay. So yeah, so welcome. We'll be going over brand accessibility, cave inspiration, and office hours. So yeah, a lot of this is based on this article and other things. So um, when you design something, who are your ideas based on? So often, like when you design like a brand or design like assets, you often think of like your main persona as who you're designing for, or often like yourself, and a lot of the ideas that you might come up with are might not be the most accessible. So who gets included, excluded, and essentially in design, you have to make sure that your visuals and experiences are accessible, and uh, there's also like this notion that accessible design is like less appealing because uh, like there might be less colors, it might be more quote unquote boring, but that's what design is not. Like design's not all about whether something is visually appealing. It's making sure that everyone feels included and that everyone can use or see your design in the way that in the best experience possible. So just some terminology, uh, like inclusive design versus accessibility. So inclusive design specifically is the principle of designing for people who have a diversity of needs, experiences, and backgrounds. And then accessibility, the measurable implementation of inclusive design. So this is just to clarify like what specifically accessibility means, and we'll be talking about ways on like how to make your brand more accessible and like common practices or pitfalls that people fall into. I'll skip this slide, but so some just basics. When you're making a brand, make sure in terms of information, give your users the information they need and that is consistent and easily. Be responsible, responsive, transparent. Users like interactive, accessible brands, so especially if brands make sure that they cater to different audiences, people with, especially like the Gen Z millennial demographic, they tend to value brands that are, include these type of social initiatives and uh, like we're all about making sure everyone's involved. And when when thinking about how to include accessibility, it's essentially thinking about how to design for common uses and designing for all people for different uses of abilities and skill sets. So often the main types of accessibility you need to consider um, visual, motor, auditory, so hearing, seizure. So for example, like flashing colors or related ones, and learning cognitive. In terms of brand, there's often more focus on visual, just because a lot of the assets that we like ads or logos are inherently visual. However, and that's will be the focus of most of these uh, practices. Will be mainly focus on visual accessibility, and however, you still have to consider motor example if your asset is a like something physical, like a cup, a or um, or like a physical like event. So color accessibility. So this is something that is should be a general standard when making any visual asset, making sure that your color is accessible. So this means um, like essentially your color should pop, meaning the contrast ratio between the foreground and background should be strong. So you can people or going back uh, to create this contrast, either use brightness and contrast or like contrasting colors specifically, rather than using similar hues to create that contrast. So for example, the blue and yellow are somewhat on the opposite side, or not directly opposite, but near opposites on the color wheel. So this means that there's more contrast between those two colors compared to like orange and yellow, where orange is like the next color to yellow. So on the right, like the very dark red and light pink while they're next to each other on the color wheel, but the contrast is much stronger compared to like just pink and dark red. Um, talking more about like that contrast in color. So green and red are on opposite sides of the wheel, and there's also a difference in hues, like added on top of the color contrast. So hue, the like light versus the light green versus dark red, compared to like this middle green and peach. Additionally, along with color accessibility, um, especially if you're trying to communicate information, color should not be the only indicator of information. For example, if someone was if they couldn't see, if they were, how do I go back? Okay, yeah. If they're completely colorblind, then the pink, blue, and gray would be completely like black and white. So it helps to add text or different patterns. So in this example, the person used like diagonal lines to indicate difference. So make sure, especially if you're trying to communicate information, color is not the only thing people use to differentiate things with. And you can use to check your color contrast in terms of like uh, you can use different websites. For example, this website, there'll be resources tab later in the presentation that you can refer to look at look at how to making sure um, your designs are contrast compliant or are WCAG compliant, which is the standard for accessibility. Uh, yeah. So these are just some questions that you should consider in your design. The reason why we really emphasize in our logos like monochromatic is because color should not be the only thing. Like color should not be the sole indicator of making your logo recognizable. Like you can still recognize like Coca-Cola or like Pespi, even though like Pespi like is around like the blue, white, red, the shape of the Pespi you still can recognize it. So making sure that it works in monochromatic is really important, especially when thinking about accessibility. And the second question is color absolutely necessary to guide the user to do a certain action? So like in the previous slide about conveying information, if color is the only like indicator of information, then it might not be the most best use of color. So for example, in this like image, if let's say you inputted an incomplete label, if it's only highlighted in red, someone who might be red green colorblind might not be able to see that this is highlighted in red. So often adding an icon or even better like text next to it will help give more information to the user. So they're not only relying on color to determine when something's wrong. Another example is this one. So the last one, it uses both text and icon to indicate information. So I think this is more applicable to web and UI design, but this is also still for those of you making like websites for your assets, but this is so relevant for like call to actions or like making graphs in your if let's say you're making infographic or even your business cards um, if you use color a lot for information. You can use like I said the WCAG, which is the color standard, color contrast accessibility standard for color. You can use like websites to like check the ratio. Yeah, and then essentially what that ratio is that for if you want, so there's like different levels of like uh, guidelines that you should pass, and at each level there's like different contrast ratios that you should follow. So essentially, the higher the contrast ratio, the better the the better the contrast and the better the legibility of like the better that the more people can see it if it's a higher contrast ratio. Yeah, so an example level is called AA. So the levels are split by A, 1A, 2A, and 3As. And this is like the minimum ratio for AA, I think, is like 3. yeah, free. So yeah, these are just like some examples of what passes the AA, WCAG AA standard. A lot of acronyms today. Yeah, here's some more resources. Image accessibility. So especially if your content, your brand is focused on like using images or using graphics, for people who might be blind or like unable to like picture out certain images, it'll be useful to have like a alt attribute, uh, an alt attribute alternative text on the website or on like the buy copy or writing captions. So example, like use like TikTok, like uh, they always have like the captions to like so people who might be deaf or have hearing disabilities, they still can hear or they still can engage with the content, regardless of like them if even if they're not deaf, they still can like be engaged with the video. So on IDOT, there's a good example of this. So they like include in their like captions like what the image is about. So like here, slide 1, illustration of a pencil notebook on a blue background. Text reading, writing is a part of design. So that's an example of using alt text in like marketing or um, on the web. And images, you can also make sure image is accessible or not by simulating on the web what it might look like. So it'll basically change the whole screen to be like as if a red green colorblind person would see it. And I'll be showing a demo of how you can do that soon. You can do that on Photoshop and Illustrator as well, by changing like the like the proof. I'll show you again later. And then in terms of text, so this is more related to like hearing disabilities. Or just like making sure it's legible. So don't justify your text. I think we mentioned this several times that justifying text makes it a bit uneven. And just makes the left one a bit more easier to read. And a certain like a good rule of thumb is that like 16-point font is a good size for text. You can use smaller if it's like you're like specifically interacting with the web or like photo, whatever. But don't keep it too small because like we want to make sure that everyone can see what you're writing. Here's some more just guidelines on like text. So 1.5 spacing, paragraph, between paragraphs also 1.5, at least 1.5. And base font 14, 12, depends on the screen size, but generally above 12. Also, you should make sure like the actual what you're writing on, like going back to like the copywriting part of lecture last time, like what you write should actually make sense. So for example, like this does not make sense at all. Like there's an IP address conflict with another system on the network. Like I don't know what the hell IP address, like I know what it means, but I don't know I don't know how to fix it, right? So you should make anything you write also be easily understood by anyone. So be short and clear. And by doing so, you can assist users with cognitive disabilities and create a more joyous experience, like by interacting with the product, because it's explained in a way that an eighth grader can read it. So for example, like MailChimp, when you like input a existing username, they tell you that, oh, the username exists, but also that like some quirk added onto it. So I think we talked about MailChimp again last lecture, or like 2 lectures ago. So this is just an example of how copywriting is also important in like making sure it's accessible. But in this case, they, along with what's wrong, they add their own personality. So the last point, being fun can add personality, just be wary of overdoing it. So basically, a common way that to make sure that you're still being accessible is like the first part is explaining it and then adding your personality rather than just like leaving. Just if you put like maybe it's evil twin, that's not accessible because he's not really explaining anything. So I think going back to like the color thing, but design with both icons and imagery. So if text not alone, if you don't, it's not good to use only icons. It's often good to use both. For example, like when you like on TikTok, again, they put like the icon and like what tab it is about because them individually will not give that much clarity. Uh, Make sure what you write and depict can be universally understood by everyone. So either you give language support or you write in a way that anyone can understand it. And even if they can't like understand the language, can they still interact with the website? For example, like when I go on like Taobao or like as a Chinese e-commerce website, my Chinese is not that good, but um, because it follows like the general patterns, I still can understand where to go. But yeah, and then I'll be giving a very quick demo. The link is in a Notion. I forgot to link it here, but it'll just be going over like what you can do on Illustrator related to like accessibility. So, okay, I'm out of breath, but give me a moment. Wait, so yeah, this file basically explains everything about or like the things that are most commonly used when making sure something is accessible. So for color, you can like so just to clarify, let me show the whole screen. So when you go to like, I think it's, oh yeah, here, color mode. So the difference between RGB and CMYK, so RGB is for web and CMYK is for print. So often, like if you press CMYK mode, it desaturates a lot of the colors because when you print something, you can't print every color that exists on in the world, right? So that's why it would sort of desaturate the color so it reflects what you print out. And then if using web, it's fine to go with uh, RGB. Yeah. Yeah. So for example, when you pick a color, uh, okay. Oh yeah, if you like switch between like if you switch in C1K and go back to RGB, it would maintain it. But if you do the reverse, it would actually change the colors. Um, check. Okay, yeah, I got all colors back. So let's say I want to change a color. So you see here, there's like this warning sign. It means it's like out of gamut, meaning like in CMYK, this color does not exist. So if you click it, it will change it to the in gamut, meaning you can still see it in CMYK. And then there's also these web safe colors. So if you click only web colors, it basically like it just limits the total amount of colors you can choose from. Yeah. And then color choices. So yeah, you can either click only web colors, which gives you a limited palette to make sure that it is web safe. So meaning the contrast between each color is good enough. Um, and what you can also do is like view in specific color blindness. So if you do go to view, proof setup, so you can see like uh, protanopia or deuteranopia. Um, if you click it, you basically see like I think this is red green colorblind. Um, and then the other one, yeah, I don't know what that one is, but yeah, this is like basically if you still can see the contrast, it still works. And generally, like the colors that you should generally avoid being together are like these color combinations, because often like they're people will be colorblind in both, or they look the same depending on what type of color blindness you have. Um, Let me go back. Okay. Oh, not that one. Okay. You can also edit your colors more specifically. So here, uh, actually, let me just follow what it says here. So you go object. Let me click on the object first. So object, color balance. I'll just search color balance. Oh, object. Yeah. Oh, edit colors. Adjust color balance. You can like directly. You can grayscale it. You can make it RGB. Things like that. If you want to edit your color specifically, or you can, if you go to appearance and then go here, if you click like the palette icon, you can edit in either CMYK mode, or if you click this thing, RGB mode, HSV, or grayscale, or even web safe RGB. So yeah, if you again, it's appearances, the fill, and then clicking this like the palette, and then clicking this like options icon. For text, so this is just the same information from the slides, but just make sure that you choose a font that's legible in all cases, so people who are dyslexic can still read it properly. For example, in Gil Sans, the BD look exactly the same. So it might be confusing because they look the same. So easy common fix is like adding a tail or making it like taller or a bit different. Yeah. And then I think this was on a slide before, but these are explaining all the different, what each thing means. And then, yeah, this is the same. You can, yeah, you can look at these ones. I think these are a bit self-explanatory, but you can essentially like you can manipulate the text a bit more, uh, with more control if you like open the typography panel. Let me open it just to see what it looks like. Oh yeah, you can like change case, remove like hyphens, uh, make different indents for bullet points, things like that. And then for design for cut documentation, I think this is like something that you don't really talk about a lot, like when you hand off an Illustrator file to someone else. So what you can do is like you go to file, I think it's package. So package basically makes sure that all the images and fonts that this person used is retained and sent. And when you send the whole package to someone else, it okay, let me save it. And let me show you what it looks like. Here. So I think if you open it, yeah, it basically just shows like what fonts are used and like what images are needed. And especially if you're like sending like fonts that are like private or like you have to buy it, what you can do is like, hello, let me, okay, it's my favorite, this is my favorite font. Okay, so let's say like you want, if you send, let's say if you send this on AI, like, and people don't have this font, it just goes back to like Myriad Pro or something. So what you can do is like, go to type, I think it's outline, create outlines. So this makes it a vector, meaning you can edit the specific, like you can treat this as a shape, and meaning so like when you give this to someone else, the type is still present because it's not a font anymore. It's a shape. And then you can also embed images onto the file directly. So for example, if you send an AI file and sometimes like the images are missing, it's because it's only local, the images can only be found on that computer. So what you can do is like if you click here, there's a button, let's see, let me unembed it. But basically you press embed and it'll save the image directly onto this file. So when you send it, it'll still be there. Um, yeah, you can name everything on, you should name everything on your files. And yeah, I'll pause for now. Should I show more Illustrator tools or should I pass it to you, Katrina?
I mean, I think we're gonna go over like just general Illustrator questions in the office hours portion, so we can
Mhm.
hold off if you want.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
My breath is
cool.
tired.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, take a break. Okay. Um, Let me share my screen. Okay. So this is going to be a pretty short segment, but I thought it'd be nice to go over creative inspiration in case any of you guys are like in a creative rut right now or just don't know what to do. One good example, if you like really just are out of ideas and you don't know, like you want to make something, but you just like don't know where to start, would be design challenges. One good example would be Inktober, which comes up every October. This guy releases like 31 prompts for each day of October, and you're supposed to basically ink it. And it's like a super popular challenge. But you don't have to wait until October to start something. On the left is something I started called Brandtober, where I tried to make a brand every single day. I started it last October. I am still doing it. So you do not have to design something like every single day, but I think it's a good challenge, and sometimes it's better to kind of just force yourself to start. I feel like that's the hardest part versus, just like trying to sit down and make something perfect. It's better to just aim for quantity over quality sometimes, honestly. And I feel like if you give yourself a dead like time limit and you're just like, okay, I have 15 minutes to make something, it takes a lot of the pressure off of like making something perfect or making something good that you'd be proud to show to the world because it's not like a good mindset to have when you're creating something. Yeah, I feel like you should just create something to have fun and to tap into whatever you're feeling or your emotions versus sitting down and creating something like with the intention of like this, okay, this is gonna have to be good. I have to put this on my portfolio. Like I feel like the end result is just never something you're gonna be satisfied with if you have that mindset constantly. The one on the right would be Jago's. He did 100 days of UI. I don't know if he actually finished. Yeah, he did not finish. But there are so many challenges. If you literally just Google like the daily UI challenge, if you're into product design, a lot of prompts will come up. Um, or you can make your own. So like what I did, but I don't know, give yourself a bunch of random words or prompts and like try to make either brands or illustrations or like a cartoon every day. Um, this one creative YouTuber I was watching the other day, he really had a hard time just like starting and he really dabbled in a lot of things. And his mentor basically told him, like, okay, your problem is you don't have a specialty. So draw the same thing every single day for a year. And he was like, what? That's crazy. But he ended up doing it and he ended up getting really good at drawing. And I think it was just like the hardest part was like figuring out what to do, what to make, and like when he sat down and drew the same thing every day, that kind of like took away the pressure of that. And he got really creative with it. So he'd draw like the same bird every day, but he'd make cartoons out of it. He'd make an animation, and he ended up just like having a lot of fun with it and learning a lot. So yeah. These are a few examples. 36 Days of Type, that's going on currently right now. So if you follow any typography designers on Instagram, they're kind of going off right now. It's their month. Dribble has a lot of like weekly warm-ups. So here this prompt says design a label for a fictional brand of soap. So you can like upload it to Dribble. Some people will like what's the term? Like reshot, something to do with basketball because it's like dribble. But yeah, and it's kind of like a good community. And yeah, you can see a bunch of other people's kind of responses to their prompts every week. And then daily UI, like I mentioned, is for people more interested in the product design side, UI UX design. You can design little interface elements every single day. These are a few websites that I personally love going to whenever I'm kind of in a creative rut. Typewolf.com is honestly like the best website ever. Each day they put up a new website, and it's a great source of inspiration if you want to look at font pairings or just learn more about typography and how those different fonts are being used every day in different brands targeted to different demographics and consumers. Best of Packaging, if you're really into packaging and branding, is a really good Instagram account to follow. He posts like multiple times a day, and it's always like really beautiful work. So I love just scrolling through that. And sometimes when I'm really bored, I'll just look up studios and agencies that I really admire, see what they've been up to. I've listed out a few right here. So Herman Shear is a small studio based in Los Angeles. Fun fact, the facilitator before me now works there. She's amazing. Her name is Maria Ogawa, so you can also check out her website if you want. She's a good source of inspiration. Collins is an agency based in San Francisco and New York, and I really love their work as well. Same with Character and Playground. Saint Urbain, I don't actually know where they're based, but they also do really great branding work. We Are After Hours is actually based right in Berkeley, and they just came out with a really cool chili sauce brand today. So if you want to look at their Instagram or website, go for it. And then Wayno is also an agency based in San Francisco, New York, and I believe Iceland. But if you need any more, please always talk to me. I love looking at agencies and studios and finding jobs. So yeah. Also just wanted to cover designers fatigue because burnout is like a super real thing. I mean, not just in the design world, but like I think everywhere for anyone. I feel like we are all especially feeling it right now. We literally have like 2 weeks left. I am just trying my hardest to graduate. So yeah, I feel like if you're dealing with burnout, which is something I'm dealing with right now, just take a break from it, whatever you're doing, go to bed and come back to it later because I feel like it's just pointless to like force yourself to do the work if you're really not in the mindset for it. But I think that's speaking from like a creative point of view. I feel like if you have like a physics problem set, it's a different story. You just kind of have to grind through that. But in terms of branding and design and stuff, sometimes it's just really good to take a break, go exercise, eat a meal, go for a walk. And also just like experiment with different creative projects. So different mediums. Let's say you're really into designing brands and you only use Illustrator and Photoshop, which is me. It would be kind of nice to experiment with painting and watercolors and like drawing and just like taking the pressure off of always having to make something look perfect or like make something that you think is good enough to post on Instagram. Because it's good to take that break. And yeah, another thing would be to just make design friends. And one easiest way to do that would be to join a bunch of different design clubs. And I feel like we've talked about this a lot, but Berkeley does have a plethora of design clubs. So Innovative Design, Berkeley Innovation, and Magical. Jago heads up Design at Berkeley, which is like the ultimate world of design for Berkeley. So check that out as well. And yeah, I mean, if you ever want someone to bounce ideas off of, you can talk to any of us or shoot us an email. And yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say for creative inspiration. But now we're kind of just going to go into what we call office hours. So basically, any questions you have about anything related to this class or branding or design, now is the perfect time to ask.
Wait, let's also do homework announcements for
Okay.
seconds of recording.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Yeah. So announcements. Next week's lecture will be about building your own portfolio, putting it together, your personal branding, and just like a general Q&A. Sorry. And this is to prep for your final presentation, which will be the next week. So everything should be done by this date. You'll be officially done with this class by May 3rd. Everyone will present. It'll be really cute and fun. But yeah, just like putting together all of the assets you've made so far and packaging it up into like a neat little presentation will be kind of your main goal for the end of the semester. So your homework is to finalize your asset, make any necessary edits, and also make 2 more assets or as many as you'd like, but a minimum of 2, and make sure to use mockups as well. So like an example would be like if you made your business card and posters, now you can make like a sticker and like a tote bag or something like that. But we'll be going over how to build and brand your portfolio in the next lecture. Yep, that's it. So yeah, thank you. But please, if you have any questions, ask now.